So this is really a bit of a warm-up video in the sense that, as you can see, I have got my hands on a Starbird Space Avenger by Milton Bradley. And you might remember I've just done a video on a robotics set that I picked up by Milton Bradley. Now that one I wasn't looking for. This one I had to search for, and I had to go to eBay to get an example of this. But I did get this one for a very, very reasonable price indeed, which is surprising because a really sort of minty condition one of these will generally go for over £100 at the moment. Mine was a tiny fraction of that because it's not in perfect nick. However, I am going to try and get the full set of this, and in fact I've got an intruder already, but I need to put it together. And I've also got an auction that I've won for a rather Germanic predecessor to this, which is also a Starbird, but it was an earlier version of it which wasn't subtitled The Avenger. It was just a Starbird, an electronic Starbird. So they're very similar, but I actually want to do a side-by-side comparison because I think that would be of use to people like me who are trying to put a full one together. Because from what I can see in photos and sort of general descriptions I've heard, although they are basically the same moulding, the accessories I think are going to be different colours, which means that you probably can't swap parts between them without them looking slightly wrong. So I'm going to test that theory by virtue of having both types. But this is what my cut price one looks like. And as you can see, it's really not in bad shape. It's quite white. It's a little bit dirty in places. It's not too bad at all. Major problems include the inevitable missing turret gun, which is very hard to come by unless you pay a very high price for one of these. And I've only got one intact wing fighter, as you can see. The other one is, I do have the other piece of it, but it's not repairable. I was hoping I was going to be able to put it together again using some glue, but it's not going to happen. I'm also missing a couple of grey accessory pieces at the back here. So one of the reasons I was trying to get another one was to sort of piece together a full one to attach to this one. But it's going to be an interesting side-by-side comparison because I've already figured out that the front here, where you can see you have twin lasers and various other little sort of nodules at the front which are IR detectors, that doesn't happen on the earlier version. The earlier version didn't have those, so they are going to be quite distinctly different in those respects at least. But I'm going to do a fuller video when I've got hold of the other example of this, and then I'm going to figure out how I try and get a full version of one together if I can. If I can't, I might just have to save up a bit and fork out for a full price one. But what I'm going to do now is deafen you, okay? So I apologise in advance, but if you're on headphones, turn them right down or take them off your ears, okay? Ready? Here I go. So that is its electronics on. So when you go up, it goes up. And its weapons do fire. But I'm getting to understand I'm beginning to understand why many of my memories of playing with this happen in the outside. Because as you can imagine, I don't think that adults would have been terribly keen on that happening a lot on the inside of the house repeatedly. So yeah, so that's one of the little fighters. They're individually numbered. Now I always used to fly them around like this, but I have seen a lot of people, and it doesn't make perfect sense, who would suggest that they fly around in that configuration, which makes perfect sense to me. I was going to show you the box as well, which is why I've sort of left it here. So you can see it's got a target, and I do have the target here. I haven't made it up yet, but you can see that's the target. I'm not clear that the intruder came with this, and this was the interesting story behind this purchase off eBay, because the actual Avenger itself, as I've mentioned, was extremely cheap, which I was totally happy with. And for the sake of just getting an example of one, I thought, yeah, that's a bit of a no-brainer. That's no problem. I don't really care particularly. But then I was also bidding for an intruder from the same guy, and the intruder went for a little bit more, but I knew that they were, you know, you had to pay a reasonable price in reasonable conditions, and this one was. But this is the intruder here. So what actually happened was that when I looked really closely at the intruder auction that he was running, and this was actually, I think this was actually after I'd won it, I realised that he'd thought that these pieces were for the intruder, which is completely understandable, because of course the colour scheme is absolutely bob on to the intruder's colour scheme. So it was only when I looked really closely that it dawned on me that what had happened was that he'd put some of the Avenger pieces into the intruder box. But fortunately, because I'd got both auctions won, I've ended up with one intact fighter and one slightly busted fighter, which is just still attached to the Avengers, it happens, but obviously it's not quite looking the part. But it does mean that I did really well, and I've got most of the accessory parts for an Avenger just by virtue of that one very, very cut price auction. And I got a box as well, which is this box, which is really not bad nick. You know, it's perfectly visible. It's a little bit rough around the edges, but it's not bad at all. And as you can see, this is really good value, because you can split the Avenger down, so you get these separate play elements to it, and you get the turret at the back, and the target, and the little for the fighters. So, and also the electronic sound effects that I've just demonstrated, which were really clever. And I don't think any of the Star Wars ships of the day had any electronic sounds to them. I'm trying to think if any of them did, but I'm not sure that they did. So, as with a lot of the Milton Bradley stuff, they were quite good with their electronics. As with the robotics that I showed you a little while ago, they had a clever idea of how to incorporate electronics into the toys that they were doing. And the final thing that occurred to me about these sets, and I'll mention this again when I show you, the sort of the wider range, but the really brave thing about them is I am not aware of any TV cartoons or anything like that, or comics or whatever around the Starbird universe, if you like. So what they actually did was they simply released a toy for the sake of releasing a toy, it seems, without actually trying to market it other than as the toy that it was. So it had to sort of stand on its own in that sense. So either people bought it because they liked the look of it, or they didn't. And presumably people did, because otherwise they wouldn't have bothered releasing the Avenger. And even calling it the Avenger makes me smile now, of course, because that's been used as a term for so many other things. And for me, it reminds me of XCOM, UFO Enemy Unknown, because the ultimate craft that you can build for your own team at the end of that game is an Avenger. So I think this was well before that, of course. I've even heard people say this looks like a Y-wing, but it's like, and it's not. It doesn't really look like a Y-wing at all. It doesn't have two separate engines at the back of it on either side of the wing or anything like that. So I'm a bit puzzled by that. But for me, it was just one of those great things that you could just fly around the place, and it was electronic, so that was novel at the time. You could split it into two, so you had a sort of an escape pod or a sort of little mini craft to go and do stuff. And because there were no books and no TV shows and so on that it was based from, whatever you did with it was your adventure. So basically, you were creating with your imagination whatever the backstory was that you wanted to give to it, or not, as the case may be. So it was kind of, let's say, it was a brave thing for them to do, because it's very unusual, I think, especially these days, for any toy like this to come out and be completely unaccompanied by anything. So fair dues to Milton Bradley. I mean, I think you've got to hand it to them. I can see very clearly why Hasbro took them over, which it seems to be part of their sort of corporate story, as I now understand it, because they were releasing really good quality products, and again, these are toys that are 40 years old, and I'm still using the electronics, and I didn't have to touch it. I've literally just put a fresh battery in. That's it, and so they've stood the test of time. There's no two ways about it, and in this day and age, when we're being encouraged to sort of reuse things, this is a classic case of recycling and possibly even upcycling, if you know what you're doing. Because I mean, I don't know what I'm doing, but I might try and see if I can actually clean this up a little bit more than it, to make it a little bit whiter than it already is. I don't think it's been kept in sunshine, and sunshine is a killer for white plastic. It will yellow it very quickly. But clearly this has lived in its box, and the box is really good like that, because I'll show you the box on the inside, but it molds itself very well. So it would make the perfect reason for keeping the box, because as you can see, it's absolutely bob on molded for the thing that it's holding. So it's a very, very sensible box in that respect. And again, even the box has held up pretty remarkably well. But yeah, so I've been wanting to get one of these for a while, and I just haven't come across them in the various sort of older shops that I've that's like Cosmic Toys that specialise in this sort of thing that I've gone into. And I think Leicester had it from time to time, but they didn't have it when I went in last, and I've never seen it in their actual sort of online offering either. So I was quite pleased to be able to pick this up from eBay for a song, especially because it then allowed me to get the Intruder and not feel too that I'd spent a ridiculous amount of money on it. But the quest continues, in the sense that I've now got to wait with bated breath for this example of the earlier version to arrive from Germany, and that's going to come with a few extra bits and bobs, and it should hopefully have a gun on the turret. But from what I've seen of pictures, it's probably not the right coloured gun for me to be able to put it onto the Avenger, technically speaking. But anyway, that will be for another time, when I've got more time, and obviously when it's actually arrived. And I don't think I'll get that for a good sort of week and a half or so. So it will be more towards the end of the month, I suspect, when I can actually do the video that I have in mind for you. But it's been really lovely to have it back. But I mean, my God, it's loud. I couldn't believe how loud it was when I put the battery in. It's incredibly loud. But it's it's a nice idea though, and I believe it's quite a very simple sort of switching mechanism. So it basically knows when it's going up and to increase its pitch, and going down to decrease its pitch. But yeah, it's just terrific that it still works at all. So that's that one. So I'll as I say, I'll share with you further when I have another example of it, and then I can compare and contrast between the two, and just figure out what I'm going to do from there. So I'll leave it there for now, and I will continue the story in a little while. Cheers for now.